Thank you. I believe there's about 5 minutes. Oh, no, I've taken more time for Q&A. Yes. Can you use a microphone, please?
Jody Westby with Global Cyber Risk. So what about the Russian Empire? I mean, the Roman Empire. And, yeah, I know. And they, they built cement and bricks we don't know how to do. We don't know how they built the Pantheon. They had fabulous irrigation, running water systems, a pretty civilized life. So where does that fit in with this big picture and that part of collective learning and civilization that vanished?
I think there is a research agenda buried in the idea of collective learning. I think it's a very exciting research agenda, but it will require teams and teams of historians and paleontologists. And it will be to explore how the relationships between humans in different periods, in the Paleolithic, in the Agrarian era, in the Roman Empire, what sort of technological synergies it generated. And one of the things it will surely show is a long trend upwards, which you can see in the population graph, but medium-term rises and falls. And I think that's what you're describing. And of course, if you project forward, what I call the Malthusian crises, if you project those forward into the future, it at least poses a question. Will we face in the next 50 years the mother of all Malthusian crises? It's a long-term pattern, visible throughout human history. Now, I'm not quite sure if that was the point of your question, but that there have been failings is certainly true. But we can also see the very long trend, and you can see it most clearly on a scale of 100,000 years. Yes.
Jen Zidell, Blue Planet Network. I'd like you to respond to the following, I'm going to use the word premise, that the seeds of man's destruction were sown at his inception because of his innate egocentricity.
All species are egocentric. This is what species do. They get resources so they can survive. And in that sense, I think we're no more egocentric than any other species. The critical difference, if I'm right, is that we can do what they would like to do. And that's the dangerous thing. So that's the sense in which I believe this astonishing capacity for collective learning can be a negative thing. Incidentally, can I introduce, there's a wonderful phrase from Gramsci that may affect discussions here. He talked about pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the will. And I think that may be exactly the situation we're in. There was a question over here.
Yeah. Hi, Andy McAfee, MIT. Can you help me understand the difference between what you call collective learning and language, which you said earlier is not confined to us alone? Because it seems that surely if baboons and apes could talk to each other, as you say they can, that knowledge about hunting would have passed on down the generations.
Yep. Yeah, this is something I've struggled with, and I'm trying to formulate this idea in terms increasingly not of language in general, because just too many primatologists and animal researchers have said, no, that's wrong. Animals have language in a quite powerful sense. So I'm trying to formulate this increasingly in terms of a threshold. I don't yet know the language. I suspect it's buried in communications theory, and I bet there are a number of people here who know it. A communication system in which enough is being communicated within the network. Something is being communicated, but a lot gets lost. So it's like a bathtub with the plug open. Then you finally plug it, and you've suddenly crossed a very simple threshold after which the level of water starts rising. That's the sort of thinking I have in mind. Sorry, there was a question over here.
Peter Schwartz. Matt Ridley just published a recent book called The Rational Optimist, which follows a path somewhat like yours, but where he emphasizes, as he puts it, sex of knowledge. That is how knowledge recombines and creates new knowledge over time, and has a life almost independent of the individuals who created and are the sources of that knowledge. What do you think of his model of, in a sense, which is fundamentally optimistic and confronts, in a sense, directly the Malthusian crisis you're talking about and sees the way through?
I love Matt Ridley. I haven't read that book yet. He was a student of Richard Dawkins, I believe, and so he's very influenced by the idea of memes, which I have to say I'm not completely convinced by. But once again, I'd say the crucial difference is that we can preserve ideas so they can get selected from. If I'm right, all other species could not preserve the ideas for long enough for them to get selected from. So that's the critical difference. As for optimism, I mean, I hope I've I've presented this idea of collective learning, you know, right on the knife edge of 50% optimism, 50% pessimism. We are terrifyingly powerful. There's a wonderful science fiction novel published in the 50s, I think, called A Canticle to Leibowitz. I don't know if anyone knows it. And as I understand it, the payoff to that is civilization progresses to the point where they invent nuclear weapons, then they blow themselves up. Then they're thrown back to the Dark Ages. They progress again to the point where they've got nuclear weapons, then they blow themselves up. And this, for him, I think, is an explanation of why the SETI project has not yet yielded any intelligent civilizations. It's a terrifying conclusion, but that's the dark side of collective learning. Yes. Sorry, I've lost track of where people were, but I believe, yeah.
So, Doan Farmer, Santa Fe Institute. I just want to comment on your plot of subjective well-being versus economic growth. It's worth noting that paraplegics return to about the same state of subjective well-being 6 months after they lose their legs. And so it's also worth noting that economists have spent, the whole discipline is about maximizing utility. And I would argue that we actually, one of the big problems, we don't even know what it is we really want to do in terms of that. Happiness or subjective well-being is a very dangerous metric, and as is utility, and we are very poor at forecasting what will make us happy or not happy, and it's not clear that even if we could, that's really the goal that we're seeking.
Sure.
And I think one of the big challenges in economics is to actually understand how to sensibly speak about outcomes. You see the downfall of that when you say, look at what a lot of people like Bill Nordhaus have said about things like global warming. Well, because we discount utility in the future, we don't really need to act now, et cetera. So I think I would take your slide as highlighting a major problem in what we don't understand right now.
That's exactly how I intend it. It's not a solution yet, because the discussion about happiness, I think, is a discussion we need to have. We're not yet having it, because contemporary economic theory basically ducks that issue. We need to have that. But my understanding of this, and it's rather crude, I don't know my way around this literature in detail, is that what it's really saying is there are some very simple things that have a lot to do with contentment. They include friendship, a sense of community, basic sense of physical well-being. These things need to be given more importance than sheer consumption. We cannot keep consumption at the center of our definition of growth. I think I'm right in saying that. The evidence is pretty powerful that that's a very dangerous thing to do. Now,
that has to be the last question. Sorry, David. Thank you so much.
Oh,
really
okay,
good.
okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.